Okay, good morning, colleagues. Good afternoon for you. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Valeria Caru-Jones, Evaluation Advisor from the Evaluation Office. And I'm here with Jordi.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. How are you? Thanks for joining.
And Joseph.
Hello, good morning also, everyone. A pleasure.
And I'm sure you know Jordi and Joseph, as many of you I think have been in the introductory, apart from all their work in the developmental evaluation phase 1 and 2. So I'm sure you've seen them before. So we're back. And so in this case, if you recall, in July, we did an introductory session on adaptive evaluation approaches. And so now we're moving more to the more technical sessions. So there will be several sessions. We're just doing now 3 in December, and then we'll do the rest in the new year because there's not enough time to do all the, so the first phase, exactly, we did it in July, and now we are going to have, I think we have 6 technical sessions, and we're going to do 6 or 7, and then we're going to do them now 3 of them. So just a reminder to come. So this is the first of the technical sessions, and there will be 2 more that are going to be different to this one. So we hope you can join us for all of them. And these, as a reminder, also these technical sessions are based on your feedback that you provided us when we held the introductory session. So we've taken on that, and this is what is of interest to you and would be useful, and this is the result, these technical sessions. And then I'm also hoping to move to phase 3 next year, where some country offices, some of you might be interested in testing some of the methods we're going to look at in all these sessions, and you would want to try them out in your country office to undertake these different types of evaluations or use some of the methods or tools, and we would support you. With coaching and technical support if you wish to undertake or try out these methods. So I'll pass it now to Jordi and Joseph to start.
Okay, thanks so much, Valeria. So yes, the idea is that these become adaptive evaluation pills. When we say pills, like all pills, they are intense and are intended to give you a boost. So actually, the presentation today, the idea is Joseph and I will go through a number of elements that you would like, and knowledge that we would like to pass on to you. There will be some interaction, but the idea is that you revisit these slides and the material that we will provide to you, that you go through it, that you see what is interesting for you, and then you start testing. So the idea is not that it's a one-off, but that you use those materials, even if you want to take this presentation then and make presentations in your office. That is the idea. So there is plenty of slides, but they are intended so you have all that material with you when you go throughout the way. So the idea today, as Valeria said, we chose a number of methods that were very, very highly interesting for you. When we did the session in July, the number one aspect you were interested about was user engagement. Then also timely feedback loops, we mentioned, and emergence in evaluations, how you incorporate that. So we put all that together. These 3 elements, actually, they are connected because they push use of evaluations. Yeah, they are push for the use of evaluation. So we have put them together. We will go today through the what, why, and how of each one of all these elements. So now, Joseph, I pass it on to you to start a little bit with the context, and we should. Thanks.
Thank you, Jordi, and hello, everyone. So, well, the context in which this session is prepared is adaptive management. So, you know that the adaptive management model in UNFPA is called the A-Compass, and the A-Compass has 4 main drivers, and one of them is learning. So, adaptive evaluation is very important for learning. So, learning for adaptation is critical in evaluations that are conducted in complex environments. So, that sets the scene and the tone for today. So as you know, the adaptive management model in UNFPA was developed by the Learn to Adapt initiative, which was a transversal, cross-cutting initiative across different divisions and units in country offices and regional offices in UNFPA. So this sets the context for today, and as well as and Jordi next, the UNFPA, the new evaluation strategy, that sets the strategy for 2022 to 2025, and the main emphasis of this strategy is put on accountability and adaptation and acceleration. You know that the main topic, the main objective, of the new strategic plan is acceleration, and adaptation is a critical component of that. Is one of the main accelerators to that. So, and the main focus, as you can see here from the demand side, is the use, enhance the use of evaluation findings and recommendations, and this is closely linked to organizational learning. So, by enhancing the use of evaluation, we also enhance learning and therefore adaptation. So, this is actually a very important component of UNFPA evaluation strategy, and today we are going to focus on precisely the use, how to foster user engagement. So adaptive management requires adaptive evaluation. So adaptive evaluation is a key component of learning, as mentioned. Evaluation results should be used as an input to decision making. So this is precisely what we want actually to discuss today, how to engage that use for the decision making processes along the implementation of any evaluation, particularly in those decisions that are related to adaptation. So if we are able to engage the user across the conduction in implementation of the evaluation, it's also likely to increase the use of evaluation results. So the more engaged the users, the more the use of evaluation results. So that sets the scene for today. And you will see that the focus is on user engagement, and we will see how timely feedback loops are precisely related to user engagement, as well as how to capture emergence in evaluation are highly associated with user engagement. And that's why today we have put those 3 elements together, as you will see further on. Jordi.
Yeah. So the target then today, the focus is exactly evaluation use. Yeah, that is the focus. How can we foster the use of evaluation? And here, when we say the use of evaluation, doesn't mean that many evaluations are conducted. Is the use of the results and the finding and the conclusions, recommendations of evaluations into decision making. That's what we understand by use first. And second is the use by all stakeholders involved. So people learn from the evaluation. That is the focus. And there are 3 pillars around this. The first one that we will go through today is user engagement. Literature and practitioner tells us if you involve users in evaluation, evaluations are used much more. That's the first thing. Feedback loops, which means you don't wait till the end to start informing the users about what you're finding out. You inform them as they need the input for decision making. That is why we call the feedback loops timely. Yeah, they have to be timely. You link the evaluation with the decision-making processes. The evaluation links intends to inform, and we will see how to do that. And they are both, as you can imagine, interrelated: user engagement and feedback loops. And then there is emergence. Emergence is when you're doing an evaluation in a changing context. The context might change, and that might affect the use. Okay, so when things change, there's a new government, changes of people in a ministry, civil society organization changing the strategy. If that may affect the use of the findings of the evaluation, that's emergence, then you adapt to that. So that's adapting evaluations. That's what emergence has to do. And it's very much linked with both timely feedback loops and user engagement. So this is exactly what we will see today. So we start with user engagement. We will devote the first hour of them today of user engagement, and then we will do timely feedback loops and emergence. So about user engagement, this is not a new thing at all. Actually, in 2016, the United Nations Evaluation Group, the UNEC, already commissioned a report on the use of evaluations, of findings from evaluations in the UN system. You have the report here. Valeria just put in the chat all the link to a folder where you can find these slides and all the materials we will go through. When you open these slides, you can access the full report by clicking the link. This evaluation using the UN system report concluded with these 6 messages. And as you can see, the first one message is, in order to foster use, users and stakeholders should be involved and consulted through the whole evaluation process. And that's what engagement is. And then also at the end of the report, once they come out with all these conclusions, they say, okay, then some questions of the research would be, and they put a number of 1, and you can see the third one is, how can organizations be encouraged to do something about supporting evaluation use? Okay, so this is something that it's a concern of the UN system, and this pill is about this exactly, of what can we do in order to foster and support evaluation use. Okay, so what do you mean by user engagement? That's very simple. Actually, user engagement is, of course, engaging users in the evaluation, but has to do with identifying who the users are. So thinking about, okay, who will be using these and for what? Organizing these users around the evaluation and then engaging them. Yeah, we talk usually about primary intended users. Those are the priority users that the evaluation would serve in terms of providing information for their decisions. Then we are approaching user engagement from the point of view of the utilization focused evaluation. This is the book that you have here on the right-hand side of the slide. This book was written by Michael Quinn-Patton. I'm sure that several of you know. He was collaborating with UNFPA in the past with evaluations. And this is the result of 30 years of him of working on how to increase the use of evaluation. So it's not only a book, it's a book that relies on a lot of practitioners that have collaborated and a lot of research. And one of the ideas is user engagement is about personal factor. So when you engage users, you engage people, not institutions. It's particular people that sit down and that you provide the input to. We will see how to incorporate that. And then very clearly, research and practitioner experience tell us the more an evaluation engages user, the more is used, and we know about that. Now, Joseph will tell you a bit about the why of user engagement.
So why does it matter, particularly for 2 things? First, to avoid the funding self-evaluation. So in general, evaluations are not optimally used, and this applies to evaluations in both complex and stable context and interventions. So sometimes when, especially for summative evaluations that are carried ex post, sometimes, fundings come when decisions already have been made. So this is something that wants to be avoided on one hand. And then secondly, in complex contexts and interventions, it's very important to manage adaptively to capture what is emerging. And then adaptive management in evaluation is essential for each use. So there can be adaptive management if those evaluation results are not used for decision making. So this link is crucial for this, for adaptive evaluation and user engagement. So the use in summative evaluation is of course important, but in adaptive evaluations is a must. So that's of the essence. So those would be the main 2 reasons. And what is the situation of that in UNFPA? Well, when we conducted the developmental evaluation, that was a corporate evaluation on results-based management, we actually, one of the findings actually were that evaluations were used actually, but not specifically for organizational learning. There was a formalistic approach to evaluation, and evaluations did not respond to a clear demand for evidence. We wrote actually a feedback note with that finding in terms of organizational culture and RBM use, and precisely tapping into this was one of the main outcomes of the UNFPA response actually to the evaluation. Jordi, over.
Yeah, so now let's see the how. We've seen what is user engagement, why it matters, and then let's see in practical terms, what do you do in order to engage users? And for this, we will use the framework that has been developed by Michael Quinn-Patton in the utilization-focused evaluation discipline that builds on a lot of years of experience. So essentially, these 5 points here are the principles. So this is what we have to keep in mind, that it is the North Star of a utilization-focused evaluation. When you want to really make the use of an evaluation and foster evaluation use, there are these 5 factors. First, as I previously said, the personal factor. So identify the primary intended users. And these are people, not just the Ministry of Health or the Ministry of Planning. They are specific people that have an interest. We will give you some tools on how to identify them and what are the attributes that you look for. The second one is that user engagement is just not to engage people for the sake of it. It has to be driven by a purpose. And that purpose is to fit into decision-making. So these users want to use the evaluation in order to inform processes that they're doing, decision-making processes. So the second thing is do and deliberate work to identify what those decisions are. And here we have prepared a number of flashcards. They are a one-pager with a number of guiding questions that can help you in different parts of this process. The first one, flashcard number one, is how to spot key decisions. Okay, you will find that in the folder for Peel 1, in the folder in the Google Drive that Valeria has put in the chat. Okay, so if you enter there, you will see that there are the slides and then there are also the flashcards. So number one, it's about identifying those decisions. The third and the fourth, they are very much linked, is about engage users. The idea with utilization focus is that you engage users in all aspects of the evaluation. Engage them developing evaluation questions, developing the methods, setting up the timings to provide feedback, engage them from the beginning. It's not only something that you do at the end or only at the beginning. So it's a full stance journey, yeah? From beginning to the end in all aspects. So in terms of time throughout, and in terms of aspects, all key aspects of the evaluation, design, conduct, and then dissemination. And then the fifth element is that if you want to engage users, and if you want the evaluation to focus use, then whenever the context changes in the evaluation, you have to adapt the evaluation. Otherwise, it ends up being useful. We will talk about this. And this is precisely what we mean by emergence. We will talk about it in the second hour. So here the thing is, there is one question, yeah? One question that we should keep in mind, and we will tell you later how Joseph, Valeria, and I applied that in this developmental evolution that Joseph mentioned, is always ask yourself, when something happens, when you have a doubt, how will this affect use in the current situation? Yeah, when there is a change in people, a change in staff, when we doubt about something, ask yourself, how will this affect the use of the evaluation? And the answer to that will guide you throughout the process. Joseph, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Jordi. So user engagement and how to go about it. There are mainly three main phases for applying that, and we will go and double click on each of one later on. But mainly the first phase is about conducting a situational analysis. So context is of the essence. Adaptive evaluations are context specific, and it's very important that we contextualize by identifying and taking into account those situational factors that will be critical to evaluation use. So we make it relevant to the context in which, the evaluation is developed. That's the first phase. The second one is about identifying primary and intended users, as is normally an outcome of conducting the first phase. So here, mainly what we do is conducting a stakeholder analysis by identifying primary intended users. And we also, as we will mention later on, we determine also the levels of engagement, because not all users have the same stake and the same level of engagement. And finally, the third phase for user engagement is actually about organizing and engaging those primary already identified intended users. So, and here it's very important to set up engagement mechanisms, and determine which touch points, which engagement moments are critical to link users with the evaluation decision-making processes. So that's of the essence. And here is where we apply that, and we materialize explicitly how to engage them and in which mechanisms. Jordi, over.
Yeah, so now we will see these three steps of user engagement: how you go about the situation analysis, then how you identify primary users, and how you organize and engage primary users. The idea is that user engagement is to do these three things, yeah, not necessarily to jump into identifying users or to organize and engage them without having identified them thoroughly. So the idea is that you follow the three steps. The first one is this situational analysis. We do in UNFPA, you do many situational analysis and diagnostics for many things. So this is about incorporating this process in an evaluation. So you identify all the factors, yeah, all the situational factors that can be critical for use of the evaluation. So here what you do is you concentrate on, okay, what is the institutional situation, the demand for the evaluation, the political dynamics, institutional dynamics, the political economy. You will see, we will show you which aspects to look at, but you do that analysis, you talk to people and you listen to people. That's what you have here. an ear here. You listen to people to identify, okay, are there any barriers to use? Is there any resistance? People that might not be prone to use the evaluation results, or you map the stakeholders, you talk to all the possible stakeholders, starting to see what would be maybe the likely intended users. And if you can, you conduct a little bit of a risk assessment. I mean, you don't need to do a 3-month exercise. It can be relatively fast, but you try to start identify, okay, what can go wrong in terms of the use of the evaluation, what we should be looking at, okay? In order to help you doing this situational analysis, we have also produced these 2 flashcards. One is, it's a 1-pager that you will find in the folder with guiding questions on a situational analysis. So it's only 1 page, and you have some questions that are intended to inspire you in looking at aspects about about the program that you're evaluating, which aspects you should know, aspects about the stakeholders around the program, aspects around the context that should identify. And then there is also another flashcard, which is number 3, that it's the forced field analysis. A forced field analysis is a very simple exercise as well, in which you try to identify the assets to use, so incentives that are there already for users to use the evaluation, and maybe some barriers. And then from the beginning, from day one, you start to think about possibilities, about things that you can do in order to overcome those barriers. So you don't think about use at the end when it's too late. You think about use right from the beginning, okay? So this is a situational analysis to make sure, to see whether, what is the situation in terms of use. We wanted to see now here with a quick poll, to what extent, this is not an exam, this is just to share experience, and maybe you have already been conducting situational analysis. We would like to know about that. Maybe not, we would like to know the reasons why. So Valeria, if you can, you have a poll here, just very simple. It asks to what extent you conduct situational analysis for evaluation use, okay, and for user engagement, to a very low extent, to some, to great, and if you're not sure, you put you're not sure. So if you could please answer, and now we will comment on the results. I think there is 14 of you, and we have 10 answers, so 3 more people, and then we can share. Okay, maybe, it looks like it got stopped with 11. If you want to share, Valeria.
Okay.
Okay, so here, 6 of you, 11 of you answered. 6 of you considered that you do the situational analysis in terms of use and user engagement to a very low extent. To some extent, there are 2 people, 2 of you, and then 1 person said that to a great extent, and then 2 person you mentioned that you're not sure. Now we would like to get a little bit very quickly, if you can just unmute your mic and share a little bit. This would be very interested in understanding this, if you want to share, of course, the person that replied to a great extent, if you could share that experience with us, that would be very, very interesting. Would you be willing to share? Because of course the poll was anonymous, so we don't know who you are. Just unmute the mic, microphone. Yeah, Golden. Hi. Okay, yeah, it looks like it's not working. Can any of the two people that mentioned to some extent, 2 of you mentioned that you're doing situational analysis on use to some extent. Could you please share with us your experience? Would you like to do so? I repeat, the ones of you that consider that you're doing already situational analysis to some extent, could any of you share quickly with us your experience on how you do that, how you go about it? Hi, Secondino. How are you?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
We didn't do a very, very thorough situation analysis. However, we contacted some of our implementing partners and also to see how the situation after our implementation, the changes that occurred, though it's verbally sometimes, we have some informal discussion with the implementing partners to see what are the changes before we officially conduct formal evaluation. So, I mean, this also provides us on how to map the stakeholders for the evaluators to also meet during the evaluation. So that is, as I repeated, that this is not a thorough situation analysis, but informal discussions or conversation with the stakeholders.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Secondino, for sharing that. And just before we proceed forward, any of those of you that said to a very low extent, can you tell us a little bit, what is the reason? Is it because of time, or maybe because it's not, you consider it's not necessary, or just share your thoughts about it. This is about thought sharing, so please feel free, anybody, if you just unmute and you can jump in.
Yes, Moses here from Pacific
Moses.
Sub-Regional Office. Yes, we already have a very complex evaluation process, within UNFPA with our Gaia handbook. And the only time we thought about, the users is when we do the terms of reference, thinking about who are the intended users of the evaluation. But in terms of doing a thorough situation analysis on the use per se, we just don't have probably the time to do that. But I'm glad that the microscope has been put under this very particular topic, and yeah, thanks. Over.
Okay, thanks so much, sis. Thank you very much. Yes, we will see. Okay, so we will proceed further now with the rest of the process. But here the idea, what utilization focus evaluation has come up with, is that when you don't do the situation and analysis, there might be risks in terms of use, right? Here, our obsession is that the evaluation is used, and there might be aspects having to do maybe with the stakeholders, with decision making. Maybe there is a resistance in a particular ministry to use the results of that particular evaluation in order to make decisions. If you know that from the beginning, you can lobby and you can do your work, you see, in order to achieve that. Otherwise, you do all the work and then you put it on the table and then nobody does any action about it. So that's the whole idea of this. We have a few tips out of our experience as well of this. Joseph, if you would like to.
Yes, we would like to share some tips. So this is based on as Jordi said, on our experience for situational analysis, because in the context of user engagement, the situational analysis actually can be done in different ways, but the main one here, the idea is to involve the users in getting, their perspective. So first of all, it is important to check, the readiness, to what extent they are ready to engage, to participate, to provide their input. So sometimes that depends also on organizational cultural aspects. There are organizations, in which this is something that users engage, they participate, they openly express their own opinions. So first, check the readiness. It's not only about just reading documents, of course. It's very important in that context that you engage the users as primary also sources of the data in which you will base your situational analysis. So meet people formally and informally. So that requires, you know, a lot of interpersonal skills, of course, but it's very important to learn directly from them, speaking about organizational and political context that may, you know, affect the evaluation. So this is super important. It's important to listen, to understand their perspective, involve even if they are divergent perspective, so they are all welcome. And through that, getting a sense, you know, of what the evaluation needs to address. So we really focus and target towards the use that those also engaged users expect from that evaluation. So those would be some quick practical tips on how to conduct a situational analysis. John Gilbert.
Yep. So after the situational analysis, the next step is to identify the primary intended users, okay? And here you already mentioned, some of the colleagues already mentioned, well, before we start an evaluation, we interact with the stakeholders, yeah? You do a stakeholder analysis. That is part, of course, of the country program evaluation methodology, and most probably you also use it for other methodologies, okay? So here what we're talking about is about intensifying that a little bit more. So here the idea is that you identify primary intended users. So from the beginning, you identify those that are more likely to use the results of the evaluation in decision-making. When we do a stakeholder analysis, we identify those that have a stake with an evaluation, okay? Users are stakeholders, but not all stakeholders are primary intended users, okay? This is the message here. So when you do the stakeholder analysis, try to identify those that will be most probably the primary intended users, yeah? And then you start thinking about how many to engage, yeah, and how to that extent that is feasible. We will share an example right away with you. But this how many is very important, because all these mechanisms, in order to engage them, have to be managed, and that is time and that is effort. So you have to make that realistic. And then you also determine the levels of engagement. Okay, there are different levels of engagement. So user engagement is not the same level or intensity of engagement for everybody. You might engage some of the users to inform them. There might be a consultation process. Then some might be better involved. Some might collaborate with evaluation, and some you might need to even empower them. Empower them meaning helping them out, yeah, and facilitating the process through their decision-making through the evaluation. So there are different levels of intensity. This this level usually goes with the primary intended users. We have, in order to find who are the primary intended users, tool number one, which we already mentioned, it's intended for that. It's you spot the decisions that might have to be made with the findings of your evaluation, and that's what makes you identify the primary users. Sometimes at the beginning of the evaluation, you don't know that. So that's why you have to keep your antenna open, yeah, so that once you know what the decisions are, you can incorporate the primary intended users. We have two flashcards to help out with this process. The first one is number 4. It's developed by Michael Quinn-Patton as well. It's called the TikTok framework to identify primary intended users. So it's a framework with the characteristics that primary intended users should have. So that will help you identify them. And the second one, it's a table with the different degrees of use. So you have a table and where it's explained what it means to inform, to consult, to collaborate, and to empower. So you can have an idea of the different degrees of involvement. Okay, here we have an example. Joseph at the beginning mentioned the developmental evaluation of RBM in UNFPA. This is not a country evaluation. It was a corporate evaluation. So it was an evaluation of results-based management in UNFPA. And that's the one that Valeria, Joseph, and I were working together with. Here you have an example of the stakeholder mapping. Yeah, we did a stakeholder mapping of all the units or the groups that could have a stake in the evaluation. The ones highlighted, the policy and strategy division, they were the main stakeholders because they are the one that commission that evaluation. But then you have many other business units, the human resources division, the change management secretariat, resource mobilization, all these in UNFPA, right? The executive office in UNFPA. And then we also have the board members, the donors, country offices, regional offices, innovation office. So there were many units having a stake. All these are stakeholders, but some of them are users and others maybe are observers of the situation. They just want to be informed. So the type of use is different. So that in order to identify who were the primary intended users, a way of doing that is to organize these different circles. These would be like circles of like an onion, in which you have the circle in the middle, that would be the intended primary users. Then you have secondary users, and then you have the last circle, which would be the general users. And outside the circle will be stakeholders that maybe will not use the evaluation, but they just want to be informed about it. Okay. And then we started, we did an exercise. Yeah. Mentally, we were like putting all these people in their places. We knew that the policy and strategy division were primary intended users because they had commissioned the evaluation. So in your case, if you're doing a donor funded evaluation, so the donor, the FCDO, or the Norwegians, that might be right in the center because they are the intended users, the one that want to use it. In our case, there was also the executive members, and then we had the executive office that was also interested because RBM is something that you do across the organization. So they were interested in terms of institutional policies. Okay, and then we started putting what we thought the different units across this in terms of the use that we thought that they would have. You see some like the evaluation office was providing, actually supplying with this evaluation. And the innovation office, we thought it might be interesting for them as well at some point to know what's happening with RBM in UNFPA. This was done at the start, okay? So this was the positioning that we had, at the start of the evaluation. But then what happens? You start conducting the evaluation, and here we're talking about an intervention that was, the evaluation was about evaluating how RBM was working and thinking about the new stage of RBM in UNFPA. Okay, so there was a forward-looking exercise as well. So the context changed a lot. Look what happened. Here in this graph, what you see is later on, as we started coming up with findings, we started to do timely feedback loops. So we didn't wait till the end, 1 year, to provide a report, and that's it, these are the findings. We were informing different stakeholders as we were going through. And then what happens is that plenty of these stakeholders, they started to become users. The level of use started to increase. You see, like the human resources division, they were developing the competency framework for UNFPA. And that competency framework has to do with capacities for results-based management. So they wanted to know about the evaluation in order to use the results of the evaluation to feed into the development of the competency framework. From a secondary user, they start becoming a primary intended user. You see, even the evaluation office, they were the one supplying this evaluation. We realized that they were a main user because we realized that those organizations that were moving on to different ways of doing RBM, they were starting with evaluation offices in order to prompt the change. So it was not only Valeria that needed to know about this, it was all colleagues in evaluation office. So as you can see, this is identifying intended primary users is an ongoing exercise, okay? You have to be aware of what the situation is, to be on the ball, to be connected, and to make sure that you identify these primary users as we go. Okay. Now we would like to know a little bit about in terms of, this was identifying the primary users, right? Now in terms of engaging with users, we would like to know in what moments do you usually engage with users in an evaluation, when you conduct an evaluation, and how you do that? Do you engage them at the beginning, right in the middle, at the end, throughout, and how you do that? So if anybody would like to share your experiences, just unmute the microphone. This is an open conversation, right? Just to share the experiences in terms of engagement. So once you have identified the users, how you engage with them and in what moments? Anybody? Just feel free. Unmute your mic and share your opinion.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Jordi.
The floor is yours. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. We usually engage them even during the design process, because sometimes even during the design process of the QR, we involve them already, and even the selection of the consultant for this evaluation. And also engage them we inform them in advance that there will be an evaluation. And of course, during the evaluation also, some of them will also engage, some of them will be interviewed. The evaluator will be also doing some in-depth interview with them. And also, of course, after the evaluation report are prepared, we will also share with stakeholders. These are some of the points that I would like to share. Yeah.
Okay, thanks so much. Anybody else would like to share about how you engage with users? You were talking about the ones that will use, yeah, the evaluations. How do you engage with them? Or you want to complement, Secondino? And in which ways? Do you have meetings? Do you have phone calls? Do you have workshops? How do you do that? Anybody else would like to share?
Hello,
Hi.
this is
Hi,
Yamama
Yamama.
from Syria Country Office. On the ways of communication with the users, it could be several channels. Firstly, with official letters might be sent if there are any officials engaged in the process, like emails or official letters. Secondly, we may invite them to a kick-off workshop where we introduce the TOR, for example. Then we can share it by email for their review, and then we can conduct also interviews with them or phone calls. There are several channels to engage the users of the evaluation, and of course, throughout the process, they will be also engaged in several steps. This will be taken also through the phone calls, meetings, and workshops. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. Thanks a lot for sharing this. Okay, great. We have an article here to, in the preparatory work for this session. We suggested you to read an article. You can read it right now or after the session, is no problem. You have the direct access here. It's from Eval Forward, and it was it's an evaluation community that works essentially in Africa. And not long ago, they had this survey on practitioners and policymakers on how they were supporting evaluation use and how they were, and the influence of evaluations for change. Because actually we do evaluations to learn and to promote positive changes, right? That's the whole idea that we learn through evaluation. And they collected a number of tips for evaluation. We really suggest you to read it. It's a very interesting one. It's only 5-minute read. And some of the ideas that come out on how you can engage with users are, they're talking that in order to promote change, they co-develop the recommendations with user as well. And they do that not only in adaptive evaluations, but in summative and formative evaluations. When it comes to present the findings, they were trying to innovate. Okay, not only using reports, but posters with infographics, maybe pictures to show the impact, videos, even poetry and theater. Yeah, in Bangladesh, actually, this is, I've seen that myself, showing the results of an evaluation through a theater play. And they also talk a lot about the World Cafe and the chat rooms, beyond meetings and formal meetings and conference. If you want to influence, people have to be relaxed. So they're also informal meetings, yeah. And then there is not only a policy, an evaluation report at the end. They were also doing policy briefings. And actually, when Joseph and Valeria and I worked trying to increase the use in the RBM evaluation, we were producing feedback notes. So before the final report at the end, we were producing small notes of a few pages in order to inform the stakeholders of what was going on. And that prompts use very much. Oyuna, please.
Just a question. Maybe it will come up later in your presentation. Sometimes we see cases where the particular institution or particular person has a high stake in the evaluation, but not so much interested, to be a part of the evaluation, not interested in its results, or doesn't, in such cases, how to deal with those people to bring them on board and really engage them. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a very, very important question. Actually, when you put all this, yes, we will talk about this, but when you put all this framework together, you see, when you're thinking about, should we inform them? Should you consult them? Should we, the intensity of engagement, the user determines the intensity of engagement. If you know that they do not have the time or the interest on, you have to, the idea is to do a strategy that is a user-centric, okay? So the idea is you try to spur the interest of that particular user but without suffocating the user. You see, you cannot really push users. So here, the idea actually, utilization focused evaluation is exactly about that. Thinking about different strategies for different users. You have to get personal in this, you see? It's not like everybody is a stakeholder and we treat everybody the same, but it's like having a strategy for engagement, a user engagement strategy with different points for different people. That's absolutely the whole point about this. Then as we go through this, we will see particular things that we can do about it. Actually, here you have ideas, videos. You know that people will not read the report. Maybe a video, maybe a short podcast. Maybe there are many ways in which you can start steering the interest. But thanks a lot, for the question. Is very relevant.
There is. Jordi, there is also a question in the chat by Rata, which says, are the members of the ERG the users?
That's a very, very very good question. We will now, Joseph will talk about this in a second, but just to answer the question quickly, the evaluation reference group is a group that has different roles in the evaluation, okay? Some of them might be users, but maybe not all of them are users. Because remember that an evaluation reference group also has the responsibility of the quality of evaluation, you see? So it's the quality of evaluation, and maybe they might not be using the evaluation, they just want to ensure the methods are robust and the process is sound, okay? So sometimes you have users inside the evaluation reference group, sometimes you don't have them. And how to do about that? They might be different. And this is now exactly when we talk about how to organize and engage primary intended users, not only stakeholders, we will talk about this. Joseph, I give you the floor.
Yes, thank you. So that could be actually the final phase that you have seen in user engagement, how to organize and engage users. And here the important thing is to design formal mechanisms of engagement on a regular basis, so that what you are doing, you are enabling the space where users can be engaged, where you can present the preliminary findings, and you have a space where findings can be discussed. Users can engage, can provide their feedback based on the findings. They can be interpreted and discussed. And ERGs, as Jordi mentioned, can be one of them, but there can be also some others. So ERGs, the ERGs can coexist with other working groups, action groups, or task force teams. So that's a segmentation that depends on every evaluation. In the case of the developmental evaluation, what we actually decided was to set up an action group. We call it action group because they're really focused on the decision-making process. So we involved the users that had to stake on the decision-making process because they had an interest in it, and we will see it right away. So here the important thing is establishing moments of engagement. So those touch points throughout the process. And this is something important. It's something that you can start doing at the scoping phase when you determine, when you map the stakeholders in the second phase we mentioned. And here you can start organizing by level of engagement. As Jordi mentioned, the level of engagement can change along the way. And that's important. That's important to capture how this is changing. So this is something that as feedback is, presented, findings are discussed. So then the engagement, the level of engagement can also change because you are identifying users that have different stakes, that they are more interested because they are developing something which is particularly of interest of that evaluation. So this is something that we also could capture throughout those mechanisms. And next, Jordi, we'd like to share also, following this the example of the developmental evaluation, on how we did that. So once we mapped the stakeholders as we presented, and we started engaging with users and getting their own perspectives on that, we assessed the level of interest where we, and I think that's a relevant question for you in order to identify which users have more stake and more interest on that. So here the main question was, what is the stakeholders' interest in this evaluation? And as you can see, we identified several stakeholders with ongoing processes that were very much linked to results-based management. And that was critical to identify those leverage points, which are critical points for change in the organization related to the development of the next stage RBM, which was the main purpose of the evaluation. So for example, policy and strategy division, they were actually interested in developing a new policy of RBM. So that was and that was actually the main seat that fostered PSD to commission that evaluation. Also, they were developing later on some standards on RBM. ICT was developing an ERP with that they also managed linked to the SIS, an information system that could actually contain and manage information on results. So it's a critical component for RBM. The Division of Human Resources was developing a competency framework, and they wanted to integrate RBM aspects on it. And also together with PSD and the Evaluation Office, they wanted to, the UNFPA was developing a learning module on RBM. So they wanted input from that evaluation as well. And then also we identified change management, that they were actually developing an initiative, designing an initiative on how to foster a culture to use information on results. So those were, the main interests that we identified. And what we did, we had those regular mechanisms. We involved those units in the action group. We later on also tapped into regional offices and country offices as secondary users that had the state, the finance division, innovation, executive office, and resource mobilization. But precisely those intended users and those interests, we call that this wheel. You see this diagram, the wheel of utility. And then we also set up individual mechanisms of interactions. We did workshops with them individually to actually discuss, the feedback that was particularly targeted towards that interest. So we had both two different ways of engagement with each of the users that you can see here.
So actually, thanks so much, Joseph. So Rata, when you say, are the ERG the users? Well, that depends, you see. You have to make an analysis. When you identify the primary intended users, the question is, within the evaluation reference group, which of the persons being there are from institutions that have decision-making processes in which they might use the findings of the evaluation to inform those decisions of that process, you see? And the answer to that question is the users. So there might be some users in your ERG, or there might not be. You know what I mean? So there's no general statement such as all ERG members are users. No, we don't know. We have to find out. That's why you have to do this specific primary intended user analysis. And some of them may indeed be in your evaluation reference group. Therefore, you might want to separate them, you see? So you have your meetings with the ERG, and then you also have specific meetings with user groups. Maybe some of the people in the evaluation reference group that are intended users, you might meet them as users and as member of the evaluation reference group, you see, because they have two hats, they have two roles. Okay, in this regard, we have a link to this and to Rata's question, which is very, very relevant. A few tips that we would like to share. These are not recommendations, these are just tips, things that we have learned through applying all these, and also we take on the knowledge from Michael Quinn-Patton and the utilization focused evaluation. The first is you should identify real people. So who is the user? The user has a name, a surname, and then into brackets an institution the user works for. You know what I mean? But do not identify vague groups like CSOs, civil society organizations, government bodies, the Ministry of Health, but who within the Ministry of Health, and in which department, and in what process are they involved that they will need the results of the evaluation? That is how specific we should be if we want to increase use. Then another thing is that Joseph has been presenting the situational analysis, how you identify intended users, and then how you organize intended users. So all this process takes time. To do a situational analysis takes time and effort and thinking, and to identify the primary users as well. And then to think about how you should organize them for the rest of the evaluation as well, okay? You shouldn't rush through it. There is a phase before the inception phase, before the inception phase, when you launch the evaluation, you might want to have a scoping phase. And in that scoping phase should be planned for and budgeted for, okay? This is what we did in the developmental evaluation of RBM in UNFPA, and also in other developmental evaluations, which are utilization-focused evaluations. There are some being developed in the WFP and also in UNICEF. They budget for a scoping phase. This is an important point to make this happen. Also, other things that we would like to share with you is the fact that readiness is key. I mean, Oyuna, you asked the key question. Okay, so how do we engage people that don't want to be engaged? Well, you cannot engage them intensely. So you have to engage them first a little bit softer and then try to persuade them and to make them interested in the evaluation. So it's a process of facilitation, and the readiness is key. Even in an evaluation, if users are not ready to be engaged, you don't do a utilization focused evaluation. You put it differently. You cannot force these upon people. Okay, so these flashcards 4 and 6 on the degrees of involvement, how intensely you should involve, and how you identify the users can help you going through this process of thinking. And then linked to Rata's question, be flexible with the format. If you see that in the evaluation reference group there are some users, and then there are also some users outside, create the mechanisms, because you're thinking about use. That's your objective. You want the evaluation results to be used. So maybe meet with the RG as as a reference group, and then you meet with users in action groups or task forces, as Joseph mentioned. So be flexible with that. And then customize the touch points. What is the touch point? The touch point is when you sit down and meet with the users in order to share findings or opinions or listen to them. So that is actually what we did with the RBM evaluation. We didn't sit down with the executive office together with the PSD office. You know what I mean? So we had different meetings, separate meetings with the different users, because they wanted to use the evaluation for different users and different decision-making process. So and that would mean maybe that you have a meeting with the Ministry of Health, another one with a particular CS organization, another one with implementing partners, depending on the type of use, on the different type of use that they want to do. Okay. Well, you're raising your hands if you have any questions, so we can move on that. We wanted to have now your thoughts, just to stop for 5 minutes. And once we have seen what we have seen, that user engagement, the emphasis on use, and if you think about an evaluation that you have conducted in the recent past, could you have incorporated, or did you already incorporate any of the user considerations that we have made in the previous slide? We would like to recall a little bit here on whether what we're talking about and we're presenting has already happened, it's already happening, or you think that maybe you didn't incorporate it, but you could incorporate it now in the near future. If there is any idea that you say, well, we didn't do that intensely enough, but maybe we could. So we open the floor for any of you just to share your thoughts and your perspective. So as usual, just unmute yourself and jump in. If there's nothing to be shared at this point, no problem, we continue. Actually, once you have looked at all the slides and all the materials, we would highly recommend that you ask this question to yourself. It is a reflection question. Because, you know, after we have seen all these about user engagement, and maybe even later with timely feedback loops and the rest, is there anything that I would have done differently, or maybe that we could do differently in the next evaluation that you have to conduct if you want to increase use? Okay, so if nobody wants to share this particular point, we proceed forward. Valeria, we continue, right? Or do you think that we
let's
should break
continue.
it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, perfect. In terms of timing is perfect, so no issues with that. Okay. So we will now, so we've looked at user engagement, so remember the whole, it's about user engagement, and now we will move into timely feedback loops, which are related to that. So Joseph, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Jordi. So, well, yeah, timely feedback loops, as you know, we already have started talking about timely feedback loops, and the link with user engagement is precisely this third phase in which we set up those mechanisms where we constantly engage users in timely feedback loops. Here, timely is very important word, because we have to make sure that findings, come in a time that they are useful, because decisions already have to be made. So they come in a timely manner, and so when the input is needed. So this is actually the main message we would like to pass. and it's very important for timely feedback loops to be timely. Otherwise, they could not be useful for that. So for decision making. So that's particularly the main emphasis on that. And now we will unfold on how precisely mean by timely feedback loops more specifically, and also how to go about it. So timely feedback loops are points in time, are touch points in an evaluation where the data and the preliminary findings we are having are already presented and discussed with users. So we don't just wait to finalize the evaluation, write the report and present the report. We are just having some preliminary findings that are relevant to those users that we have already identified, that we have already engaged in those engagement mechanisms. So those people involved in the decision-making process are expected, to be informed about that. So we engage them, we present, we discuss the findings, and in that interaction, users can interpret those findings and making decisions if they have to. So that the goal is to ensure that the evaluation data and the findings inspire and inform the decision-making processes at the time where the input is needed and required. So that's why timely is an important concept within this term, timely feedback loops. So they are key, critical. This is our experience in enhancing evaluation use in decision-making in all types of evaluations. But of course, when you are implementing a program and intervention, this is more relevant than ever, right? So, and it's actually one of the main features of an adaptive evaluation, because you can adapt the evaluation as what emerges, as we will discuss. So when you operate in a fast-changing environment, in a very complex context, so this is more relevant than ever. So that would be actually an important thing about timely feedback loops. And then why do we need timely feedback loops? Why do they matter? Precisely because what I mentioned yesterday, to avoid that problem, funding a shelf evaluation where findings may be very relevant, but may come too late to fit into that decision-making process. So that link is crucial, is of the essence. And that's why timely feedback loops are actually very useful mechanism to make sure that the findings are used for decision-making. So this is actually one of the things where we consider that makes evaluations more agile. And agility is the previous driver for learning. It's one of the main drivers in the Compass, or you have it here. And we defined agility as the capacity to address, rapidly address complex problems in an efficient way and deliver timely solutions aiming those fast-changing environments. So that's a critical component. And you see, some of you, I've seen that you participated in the Agile monitoring training, and how Agile is very much linked to making evaluations more adaptive. Over to you, Jordi.
Yes, thanks so much, Josep. Okay, so how do you do then timely feedback loop? If you look at this sequence, it starts with the evaluation matrix with all your evaluation questions, and then you start collecting and analyzing data. And as you can see here in this graph, you start feeding back as you collect data. So that's essential in a timely feedback loop. So the opposite of timely feedback loops would be, you have your evaluation matrix, you hire external contractors, but evaluators, or maybe you do it yourself, you collect the data, and then only at the end, you start feeding the users with the preliminary findings. Yeah, that would be a feedback loop. Actually, when you present preliminary findings, you get the feedback from those listening to you. So that would be an evaluation where you only have one feedback loop. Here, the idea is, since we want to increase use of evaluation, and people use evaluations, use means that they incorporate it or inform the decision-making process, let's link the evaluation with the decision-making process. Okay, this increases the complexity of evaluation. Of course, the easy thing is you have a terms of reference, you hire the contractor, they come after 6 months with all the data, you present it and you finish with a report. It's more complex, but the idea is that we have to increase use. And to increase, if we want to increase use, actually, I say we have because it's in your strategy, and because evaluations are funded in order to be used. Yeah, that's the whole idea. So here, what you do is you collect data. You start collecting data on a few evaluation questions. Which evaluation questions? Those that have to do with the primary intended users. Okay, and then once you have already some data that points to something, you sit down with the users and you feed them back in a feedback session. Yeah, that would be a timely feedback loop. And then after that, so they get that information in order to make the decision, and they will give you feedback on what's important, what's a priority, and you incorporate that into the evaluation. So actually, user engagement has to do with this. You engage in terms of findings, and the channel to engage with users producing findings and getting their feedback, these would be the timely feedback loop. And timely means at the time that you give them the data, the time they need the data to make the information. Imagine, for example, that you're doing an evaluation that has to inform the design of a new program. Okay, that happens a lot in UNFPA. And while you are start to collect findings, people that have to make the decisions on this design of the program, they're already meeting in order to make the decisions. Yeah, if you're not providing the input at that time that they are meeting, they will make their decisions. And then the evaluation, probably the evaluation would only reaffirm, yeah, it will be a confirmation bias, will confirm, oh yes, we already knew that, and actually that's what we make our decision. But that evaluation is a self-evaluation. It doesn't prompt the reflection and the thinking. You see, evaluations don't make decisions for people. They give them information so they can think critically about the decisions they have to make. And if you wait till the end, you produce the report, oh, the program is already designed. That's not useful. That wouldn't be a useful evaluation. So how you conduct them, a timely feedback loop? Well, you cannot, you start thinking about feedback loops right at the beginning. If you don't identify and engage with primary users and create the spaces to have those exchanges, it will be very difficult to improvise. So actually, as you can see, timely feedback loops need user engagement. Once you have the users engaged, once you have the primary intended users identified and you have the mechanisms that Joseph presented, then you are ready to start giving those feedback loops. So the more you have already done user engagement, the easier it is to come up with a feedback loop. Now, when do you do a feedback loop? Who decides when to do a feedback loop? Well, you have to sense a little bit. You have to spot the need for a feedback loop. And for that, you have to talk with the user. Yeah, you have to talk, maybe have a coffee, maybe in a meeting, in a particular meeting, they say, well, we have to make a decision next week about that particular thing or next month. Oh, okay, we are getting findings on that. Can we have a meeting before you make that decision so you can tell you a bit about what you see, you spot the need, yeah, then you convene them, you prepare the session, and then you hold the feedback session. There is a flashcard, which is number 6, on how to prepare, all the steps on how to prepare to conduct a timely feedback loop and the main aspects that you can have in order to conduct it. Here, the idea is with those flashcards and these ideas that we're presenting here, if you can implement feedback loops, and then, as Valeria said, in phase 3, we are ready to support you, to exchange with you, and to accompany you in applying all this process. In a feedback loop, what do you do in a feedback loop? You see, feedback loop usually is a meeting, is a feedback session. How do you go about that feedback session? Yeah, maybe you know how to prepare it, but then when we are there, how do we organize it? We have some ideas, and those ideas actually are already in the 8 compass, the adaptive management model compass that you have already heard about, we guess, has a toolbox. In page 35, actually, of the 8 compass, the adaptive management model of UNFPA, on page 35, you will see there is a link to a toolbox. And tool number 11 is about timely feedback loops. And there you will find all the information on how to inspire you on timely feedback loop. But usually a timely feedback loop is about presenting the findings and the data you have so far, discussing the implications of that, and then trying to identify actions that they might have with that. And then you also try to see, okay, what else do you need to know about a particular thing? Okay, we have a few tips in this regard, Joseph.
Yeah, those are also very practical tips. Well, it's based on our experience, it's very important to be always ready for a timely feedback loop. So you may have an ongoing mechanism, to be established on a regular basis, but also you may have also some information coming up, some user that needs certain data for a particular decision. So something happening, an external event that was not foreseen. So being always ready for organizing a timely feedback loop can be an opportunity for the evaluation actually, and to increase user engagement. So it's it's important not only to be reactive to demands, no, to what user engagement, to what users actually demand, but also attentive to opportunities, because the timely feedback loops may create those conditions, you know, to influence the decision-making process. It's important to use those current structures and also mechanisms and processes that are already in place, like, for example, ongoing or regular retreats that you may have in the office, conferences where the topic of the evaluation is already discussed, workshops around that, regular meetings. So you can also insert, you know, timely feedback loops inside these organizational events. We did that, for example, we inserted, you know, timely feedback loops in the RBM regional workshops that were conducted at the time that we were conducting the developmental evaluation. And also these feedback loop discussions also are a good opportunity to capture changes in context and get new and relevant information and data for the evaluation. So that's very important. And then that's also an important aspect, because, you know, what you do when you enable and create a timely feedback loop is to create a space where different users come and they share, you know, they share their position, their feedback upon the findings you present. And the level of engagement is also very much determined by the degree of psychological safety present in the room. So sometimes you may find that in a room there are users that are more engaged than others. So enabling a psychological safe environment, inviting as a facilitator, you also have the responsibility to invite, you know, all voices that are presented, to invite their perspective, to listen to them, and to respect all perspectives, even if they are diverging and contradictory. So that's an important aspect. And in order to do so, it's very important to engage with the focal points from user organizations that they have already, you know, knowledge of some power dynamics. No? And actually, for example, what we did in order to create more intimate spaces with users that were engaged, that you saw in that wheel of utility, separate meetings were very useful to us, because sometimes in plenary sessions, not all users were engaged and were able to speak with the same level of openness and intensity. So, but this is one thing that we identified by talking from, you know, with those focal points and getting a sense of the power dynamics in each organization. So here you can refer to what Jordi said, the toolbox. There's a tool specifically for that. It's tool number 4. It's called psychological safety. You will see there practical, you know, steps on how to enable psychological safety in meetings, which are very relevant for timely feedback loops. And you can use the flashcard number 1 also on how to spot decisions to influence when designing a timely feedback loop. So Jordi, over to you.
Yeah, we would like to share an example of a timely feedback loop that we did, again, in the framework of this developmental evaluation of RBM, which was a corporate evaluation in UNFPA. This was not at country level, but this is an example. We think that it's pretty close to the organization. But you can think of this in terms of an evaluation that you do in order to inform the design of a new program in UNFPA, or the new program for a particular donor, or you want to influence a particular policy. It would be the same. The process is exactly the same. So here, what did we do? We started, I see that there's a mistake here, feedback loop sessions, December, here it says 2018 and it should be 2019. Okay, but so we started with evaluation, and then 3 months after we started data collection and analysis, 3 months, right? The evaluation was a year long. And 3 months after that, we started with touch points. Okay, so we sat down with the main primary intended user, which was the policy and strategy division. They are the ones that call for the evaluation of RBM because they wanted to produce an RBM evaluation. And we shared the findings with them. So out of all the evaluation questions, there were a few prioritized evaluation questions, which were the questions that had been identified together with the policy and strategy division, because we engaged the user, the policy and strategy division, from the beginning, at the time also of developing the questions. We wanted questions that were useful to them. So thinking about use from the beginning. We sat down and we present the findings. And then the head of the chief of the policy division said, wow, but given these findings that we see here in this discussion, should we actually be developing an RBM policy in the first place? Maybe we don't need that. because we were presenting findings of how other organizations were doing it. And there was a trend, a clear trend that RBM policies were out of the way. It was other institutions were embedding RBM in the work and the day-to-day work of the staff, rather than creating a policy to follow that then were not used. So that started a process of reflection, and they said to the evaluators, to Valeria, Josep and Jordi, okay, we would like to know more information about this. So actually, can we fine-tune our evaluation question? We would like to know about the pros and the cons of our evaluation policies, because in 2 months, we want to make a decision on whether to do an evaluation policy or not. And then what we did is, okay, we took that information on board and we kept on collecting data and analyzing data. And at some point, we didn't wait till the final report. What we did is we produced a note. They requested a feedback note. Give me feedback on that particular issue. So while Joseph and I were interviewing people and collecting data, we produced a note with evidence about RBM policy, yes or no. They took that requested note on board and they made their decision. So we were feeding back as we were doing. And that happened the 5th month in the evaluation, and the evaluation was 12 months. Another example is with the Human Resources Division. We had also a touch point with the Human Resources Division. Remember that when I showed this first example, they were a secondary user. And it was in this meeting when we presented the findings that they said, oh, there are many things in these findings that are of interest for us, because we are developing learning modules, because we are developing a competency framework, and because we would like to explore this collective intelligence that you're talking about, because collective intelligence and collaboration among people in RBM systems was coming up as a particular finding, right? So, and they said, oh, what can be done? And who is working in the UN system in collective intelligence? We would like to know more about that. So we incorporated that request. We adapted the evaluation matrix, and we will talk in the next spiel on how to make an adaptive evaluation matrix or inquiry framework. And then we continue collecting data based on thinking about the use that the Human Resources Division wanted to do of the evaluation. So these are timely feedback loops. So we did a round of feedback loops in December 2019, and then later on in, sorry, I got the wrong date. So we started in 2018, December 2018, we had the first feedback loop. And then in April 19, we had another feedback loop. And then we continued with the feedback loops. So there was several in time. We didn't wait till the end. Okay. We would like to know about, how this resonates with you. And as we just presented the feedback loops, we have a quick poll as well on whether you have used feedback loops. And here, when we say feedback loops, we mean not only at the end. We do know that you do a feedback loop with the preliminary findings. That's part of traditional evaluation methodology. We're not referring to that, but feedback loops in the middle of data collection, before the final formal presentation of the findings. So Valeria, if you could launch the poll, and then we can know a little bit about how you do it.
Yes, there's something strange happening that I cannot see. You didn't remove the other poll, right, Jordi?
Let me see. Okay, let me.
Because I created it, but I
Okay.
don't see it anymore.
No, I didn't remove. Let me see. Okay, no, it actually is not in there. No, I didn't remove it. I think
I created it for sure.
Okay.
No,
because I can, as a co-host, I cannot remove anything. But yes, I cannot see it either. There is only one poll.
Yeah. Wait. Okay.
We can use the
No,
chat.
wait.
Oh yes, here it is. Okay.
I misplaced it.
Okay, it's all right. Thanks, Valeria. Okay, so we understand that you are, yes, you see the poll and you're answering. Perfect. Okay, we have 19, actually 18 participants, 14 have answered. Yeah, 15 Another 3, and then we can share the results. Thanks so much for answering.
All right, should I end it then?
Yes, yes, probably because it stopped here. So yes. Okay. Okay, so what we have is that more than 1/3 of you have not done this and you think that it would be feasible. Then 3 of you, you haven't done it, but you think it would be difficult. Then 5, you have done it, but in a different way. And then 2 of you are already producing feedback loops. Thanks so much for this feedback. Now we would like to know a little bit more, to know a little bit like the why. So maybe could the 3 people that have said that you haven't done it, but you think that it would be difficult to do this, can you share with us why you think, or what are the reasons why you think it would be difficult? So please, as usual, unmute the microphone and share your opinions with us. Anybody? I repeat, the ones that think that you have not done feedback loops and you think that it would be difficult to apply timely feedback loops if we have presented them. We would like to understand a bit more why you think, what are the reasons behind the fact you think that it would be difficult? Anyone?
Or maybe Jordi, anybody can say, can make a point on what do they think of a feedback loops.
Okay, yeah, that would work as well.
Don't be shy, colleagues.
And remember, you can also use the chat box if you like to bring your perspective here.
Hello.
Yes, hi.
Yes,
Rata?
I'm Rata. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm the one also who choose that answer. I think that we have never done that process before. For currently, we are in the process. We have not yet completed the evaluation yet because report has not been finalized yet. And the process for the feedback loop, I think that we haven't done it so far. But the way we engage is, we try to engage mostly with the IEG group in the process only. And I think it's difficult because it will take a lot of time to do so, but it doesn't mean that we are not willing to do it if we get more support and about technical support, and if we have enough member of the Harmony unit, it's would be great to do so. And this process also will require a lot of time from the user or from the stakeholder to participate in the whole process. So most of the time we find it difficult to get everyone on board at the same time to sit with us to look what we have found and to get their feedback or their inputs timely manner so that we can improve our process. And coffee will need more budget and internal resource to do so. So this is the reason that so far we have not done it so. And I also look at the evaluation policies. It doesn't mention about such engagement or process too. So maybe it is good to make another vision of the evaluation policy to specify about this type of process for the for example, the user engagement and the feedback loop process, etc. So that's what I can tell. Thank you.
Thank you, Rata, very much for this very thorough comment. Valeria, anything about, would you like to answer to Rata on the policy, or you think it's not?
Well, yes, indeed, we are reviewing the handbook right now, and now that there's this move, well, that we have the adaptive management model, and there is this move to more flexibility, agility, and adaptive management at UNFPA, we are looking to reflect that in the handbook as well. So we are currently reviewing, but yes, that is a good point. Icaro regional office did do a developmental evaluation for their program, and they did utilize feedback loops. They were able to do, I believe, 2 feedback loops. And yes, indeed, it did take them a lot of commitment and time. In this case, well, with all the regional office staff, but also with the country offices, right? Because they were also part of this working group they had. So yes, I think they found the experience really useful and enriching. But it was a bit of a change in mindset in terms of the feedback loops, but it was a very good experience, and it did inform the implementation of the regional program. Over.
Yeah, thanks, Valeria. Oyuna, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to share what I commonly observe from the country program evaluations and also from the regional program evaluation is that there is usually one point of getting feedback at the end of the field phase, right, at the data collection, to make a sense of the preliminary findings, and before even the evaluation team starts working on analysis or report writing. So in a way, it's a feedback loop, although it's not done throughout during the data collection phase. And that's what I commonly see in the evaluation that follows the traditional approach at the moment. And I had one question, a couple of questions related to development evaluation, which you don't have to reply now, but maybe hopefully towards the end of it, is and this RPN developmental evaluation really prompted us to really see how it can be applied in UNFPA, and it was really good to have this experience shared at different platforms. One area that I felt is it would be good to know that time, intensity for developmental versus the traditional approach that we use, because this is something that will have implications on not only on the evaluation team, but also evaluation managers and all the users, and it's a wide variety of users engaged, right? So I think for the country programs to have the developmental evaluation approach to use, I think it would be good to have that perspective, because the planning may be different from the traditional ways that we do the evaluations. And the other thing is there was one country office that was interested to look to use the developmental approach in the country program or project evaluation, but the problem was the supply side of it. So we had, the evaluator wasn't really willing to engage in a way that it's quite labor intensive as well. So in that regard, how much interest the overall evaluation community has in terms of using this approach where it's appropriate. Thank you. Over.
Yeah, thanks so much. You're asking questions, very, very, very relevant and spot on questions that we will be answering not only today, but throughout these adaptive evaluation pills. We have a pill, as you will see at the end of this presentation, about the mindset. How you work the mind, because you put it very, very, very brilliantly. It is a change in mindset. It is a change also in the way we approach evaluations. It's not only let's do it differently, the process is B and not A. It's a different way of thinking about this, about the use of this, and evaluators should also be prepared in terms of mindset, leadership, yourself. So there are a number of implications. We will go through all that in this absolutely in these evaluation pills, but the answer is yes. It is a different way of doing things. And the first question that you have to ask is, do I really need this? because maybe you don't need it. Maybe so traditional type of evaluations are not bad types of evaluation. They're as good and as valid. It depends on what you need and what you want. And that is what you might determine in an evaluability assessment. So we will finalize all these pills of adaptive evaluation with a module on evaluability assessment. And it is there when you start thinking about, okay, what do I need? Do I need a traditional type of evaluation? Let's go for it. Am I ready for utilization focused type of evaluations like developmental evaluations? Maybe the institution is not ready, the organization. Okay, then don't do it, right? This is a very, very, very important point that you're touching upon. Thanks so much, Ayuna. And then there is also a question in the chat from Jefferson in Bangladesh. Hi, Jefferson. It says, it's okay if we engage users to finalize donor project evaluation questions. Currently, this is done by us. Well, actually, it is okay or not. We're not the ones to say if it's okay or not. You are applying user engagement. That is what user engagement is about. Absolutely. To engage donors from the point of the designing the evaluation questions, if they are users, that would be the idea. As we started with this presentation with the principles, you engage users from beginning till the end. The fact, Jefferson, that you engage the donors in that, if they are users of the evaluation, if they are the users of the evaluation, that means that the evaluation will be useful to them. The only problem that you could find is that you only engage donors in developing the questions and you don't engage other users, because then that would mean that you discriminated users in favor of donors, or that you are only listening to the voice of donors. So equity is also very important when you start opening up to user engagement. How do you engage the different users, and how do you listen to the different voices of different people to influence the evaluation? That is a very important point, but we'll talk about that in other pills. Okay.
Jordi, if I may.
Of course you may.
Just a comment, no, because in the developmental evaluation, when we started the scoping phase, so you have seen that Jordi mentioned that it was PSD specifically one division, no, that started with that. No, there was a clear demand, and then we started asking about reflecting about the purpose of that evaluation. So if you just engage one user, you may have just one purpose. So then when we did, when we started the situational analysis and we started mapping the different stakeholders, we involved them in the discussion over what is the purpose of this evaluation? Why do we need this developmental evaluation in UNFPA? And that changed the initial purpose we had identified, and that was written in the initial TORs, terms of reference. So I think that's very relevant to involve users since the initial design of the developmental evaluation. So that's actually to us a proper way to foster user engagement. Actually, over to you, Jordi.
Yes. Okay, perfect. Thanks so much. We have still one little section on emergence as well, on evaluation. So we're gonna go through that. Remember that so far we have seen the focus on evaluation use. We have seen user engagement with the 3 phases. And then now we have looked at timely feedback loops. And now we will look at emergence in evaluations, which is very, very much related with user engagement, with timely feedback loops, and also has a lot to do with use. Okay, so put very simply, as you can see here, emergence is, okay, the context of the evaluation changes in a way that makes a difference for the evaluation, because it might change the use that users do about the evaluation. And when that happens, you have to do something about it. That's the idea. Okay, so I give on the floor to Joseph so you can tell us a bit about what do we mean exactly by emergence.
Yeah, thank you, Jordi. So what do we mean by emergence? Specifically 2 things. But before we go into that, emergence is a very an important feature of fast-changing complex environments. So it's a critical component of systems thinking, actually, and complexity theory. So there are 2 main things that characterize emergence. The first is that emergence is related to something that was not predicted and that comes out and appears during the evaluation, and that is relevant for what we are trying to know. And so those are new things because we did not expect them to happen when the evaluation was designed. And normally those changes can be contextual or organizational changes. So that's very important. So how we capture emergence is of particular interest, and we will talk about that in a second. And the second aspect of emergence is that emergence is also the result of new interactions. So when you enable spaces, for example, where you connect different users and stakeholders that were never connected before, that may come up and rise also and bring new opportunities, new things into the table. So those are changes that affect use, both things. So when we try to capture those changes, that can be in changes in context, because there's a global pandemic like COVID that was not expected, and it comes that will affect the way we conduct evaluations, or the war in Ukraine that wasn't expected and is also having an impact on how we conduct evaluation. A sudden change of government, and this will also have an impact on how we conduct the evaluation on the program we are evaluating. So those things that are not expected, that will affect use, and that pose certain risks. So anticipation is needed here. But then when we enable a space where different stakeholders interact with a particular topic, we may also create opportunities that we may capture as input for decision making. So this is actually what we mean by emergence.
Okay, so then also having to do with what we mean by emergence, what type of changes are we looking at? This is important. It's not any type of change. We don't have to get now crazy about, oh, things are changing, we should adapt. Well, we should adapt to things that might change the use that users do on the evaluation. Remember that we are now focusing on use. So these are changes that might happen in the broad context or in the context of the evaluation that might affect the use that intended users do with the findings of the evaluation, correct? Not affect anything, but the use. We have to be very targeted on that. And we will also look at elements of like emergent opportunities. So it's not only, we're not only reactive, yeah? Oh, the context have changed, that might affect use, yeah, the examples that Josep gave, but also we should be attentive of emerging opportunities. Maybe in a conversation with the user, you see that there is a particular, that there is something that is changing in their organization, and there might be an opportunity there for a timely feedback loop. You might think, wow, they're now talking about this particular thing with a particular donor. If we come in now and we feed them back on the findings we already have, maybe there is opportunity there for influence and for impact of our evaluation and the decision making, and that would also be emergent. Opportunities might emerge. If you not listen and you're not aware and attentive of that, you miss the opportunities. Okay, so we will see in the future modules on facilitating evaluations and how can you exercise a little bit this capacity. Now, once you see that thing that changes in the context that could need this emerging new thing that you should adapt to, how do you adapt? Okay, this is what utilization focused evaluation says. Okay, you might adapt the methods, you might adapt the data sources. Okay, so COVID affected the how we access data sources and also the methods of data collection, right? We could not do one-on-one interviews. We had to do it differently. We had to use remote methods. Maybe evaluation questions. Maybe you have to adapt the evaluation questions because the context has changed. There is a new minister. There is political changes that make the evaluation questions not relevant anymore. Should you be answering them? No, you just drop them in a utilization focused evaluation, right? The frequency of the deliverables, maybe instead of one, of course, one report at the end, you produce several policy briefs or policy note or feedback notes, timeliness, even the budget, if you can. This is something we'll discuss in a minute, okay? So you adapt in all these aspects. I take this opportunity. There is a question, a very interesting question in the chat that is about, how do you do in engage stakeholders and provide feedback if we are, as an evaluation manager, dealing with an independent evaluation? Here, it is very important throughout this course. The first question is whether you should be using, you don't need to use high level of user engagement as we are presenting here in all evaluations you have. Traditional evaluations are still valid, okay? So Mosese, we can talk about this, about your question of how to deal with that, but make sure of one thing. sometimes this level of adaptation and of adaptive evaluations or evaluations being very adaptive, sometimes you don't need this high level all the time or in all evaluations. You have to gauge, you have to think about what is the level that you need and whether, given your position, you can engage users to that extent or maybe not. Some evaluations will not allow for that, okay? So this is purpose-based and you will have to decide when. We will talk about this in the evaluability assessment at the end. Joseph, over to you.
Yeah, why does emergence matter? No, it's just to wrap up with that. Here, the main message is if we are not able to capture emergence, then by definition, the evaluation is not adaptive. So it's very important that the evaluation adapts to these changes that we identify, that we capture, that we are able to respond to it, so that we are able to remain relevant, meaningful, and timely. So we have to dance with emergence, and relevance is contextual. As you have here, this is actually a quote by the book written by Michael Quinn Patton and his daughter Charmaine Campbell Patton. And it's they say, you know, that relevance is contextual, use is contextual. What emerges within a particular context that may be new or changing. So it may be easier to continue doing what was already planned. But then when what was already planned is no longer relevant, it will not be useful. So we also have to be ready to let things go. So if we got evaluation questions that are no longer relevant, we may also get rid of them. And we also may be ready to incorporate, you know, new evaluation questions that responds to emergence. Jordi, over to you on the how.
Sorry. So on the how we incorporate emergence in evaluations, as Joseph said, so how to make evaluations adaptive? Yeah. It's about precisely that, how to ensure that the evaluation adapts to the context changes to remain useful. That is what an adaptive evaluation is, okay? And how we do that? There are several elements that we need. The first is the mindset. Yeah, we already talk about the mindset. This is a different type of mindset. And Michael Quinn Patton and Charmaine, his daughter, put it as this: you should be active, reactive, interactive, and adaptive. That's the way of thinking for a mindset that it's ready for adaptive evaluation. And we will see that in a particular pill at the end of this, which will be the number 4 or 5. We will look at that, an evaluator or evaluation manager that is active, reactive, interactive, and adaptive. And then we also have working methods in order to capture emergence and to be more adaptive. And adaptive moments are one of these working methods. So let me go through this very quickly. This is the active, reactive, interactive, and adaptive. This is just a slide so you can have an idea of what this is about, but we will look at that in pill number 5 and number 6. Okay, so we will have 2 pills talking about what does it mean to be active, reactive, interactive, and adaptive. To be interactive with the users and to be reactive with them and to be proactive with them, that means facilitation skills. Yeah, it is not just as an evaluation manager, you have to facilitate. That's actually what Valeria was doing a lot in the developmental evaluation that did with RBM. Her role was not just managing a contract or managing a process, was to make sure that the whole process was facilitated and there was a constant dialogue with the users. And that requires skills. We will be talking about that. There is also in the adaptive management model of UNFPA that you might start being familiar with. It talks about 4 drivers to adapt: leadership, collaboration, agility, and learning. Now, how you incorporate aspects like leadership or collaboration in order to be active, reactive, interactive, and adaptive. That's also something that we will look at in pills 5 and 6. For the time being, though, there is this flashcard that we have prepared with the main elements of an evaluator that is active, reactive, interactive, and adaptive. You can have a look at that in flashcard number 7. This is in the folder in the Google Drive that Valeria has kindly shared in the chat. At the beginning of the chat, you will see that. Okay, so mindset, which is pills 5 and 6, that is one part, and then working methods. Okay, in order to make the evaluation adaptive, one of the methods that you can use is adaptive moments. And actually, adaptive moments, this is part of the A compass, which is the adaptive management model in UNFPA. One of the elements of the adaptive management model in UNFPA, which is part of the strategic plan, this model, it is adaptive moments. And adaptive moments are essentially to stop and reflect, pause and reflect about something. When you have signals that something is changed that can affect you put your antenna. You see, that is the mindset, yeah? Evaluation managers and external evaluators should be aware of the context. Or maybe something is changing here that might affect you. That is the signal. Okay, if you think and you feel that that could be important enough, or if you see an emerging opportunity, you stop, time out, like in the basketball games, time out, let's pause and reflect about this. Okay, this changing government funds, can this affect the way in which this evaluation we are now conducting will be used? Then you stop and you have a reflective meeting, yeah? And the adaptive moment methodology proposes a particular method in order to do that, which is the what, so what, now what framework. You have all of this in the A compass. There is a section on adaptive moments where you can apply. But just for now, adaptive moments could be a way in which you could go about taking in emergence in evaluations. Okay, Joseph, some of the tips, please.
Yeah, for that, I mean, sometimes, you know, if you pretend to adapt to all contextual changes that requires time and resources, and maybe it's not needed at all. So maybe you don't need to adapt to all contextual changes. So here it's very important, you know, to critically assess which ones are the most important for the evaluation. So asking these two questions may help us in doing that assessment. So will this changing context affect the relevance, timeliness, or use in any way? Or will the evaluation still remain relevant, meaningful, and timely under the changing conditions? So assessing that we think is of particular use to be also efficient in the process. If there is no time for adaptive moments, maybe we can use just 15 minutes in regular, already scheduled meetings, you know, to ask the question, are we seeing any contextual changes? Are there any new opportunities or risks emerging? Have we noticed anything new we should adapt to ensure use? So those things are important as tips. And then also we have something important, no, that we need to, and next slide, Jordi, we need also to empower others, involve insiders, so that we can also build upon and leverage upon, you know, the different opinions, perspective, and lenses to capture signals. So these early signals are important. So here it's a way we exercise our leadership, in which we dynamize, you know, insiders, and we empower everyone related to the evaluation, in which we can also, you know, learn and leverage upon their own opinions and knowledge. If you're not sure whether, you know, your office or your new evaluation is ready to incorporate high levels of user engagement, that, as Jordi mentioned, you don't have to, it depends on the evaluation, then it's important to include this into the evaluability assessment. This is in the last pill, the pill number 6, we will touch upon this aspect, so that we make sure that we assess whether we need, you know, a high level of user engagement, because it has certain implications, as we discussed before. Jordi, over to you.
Yes, okay, and to finalize, we have seen that in order to incorporate emergence, so imagine that you do an evaluability assessment, as Joseph said, and you ask yourself, are we ready? And should we caring about emergence in this evaluation, and are we ready to do that? And the answer is yes, you should be adapting to emergence in this evaluation for this and this and this reason, and yes, you're ready for it, okay? And what you will need is the right mindset, reactive, interactive, proactive, yeah, what we've seen. You will need methods like adaptive moments, but then Michael, Quinn Patton, and Charmaine, they said, you will also need the right infrastructure, okay? A supportive infrastructure. We will not get now in depth into this. This is something that, as you can imagine, required time and organizational changes. But if you really want to be very adaptive and in an evaluation, you also need not only an adaptive mindset and adaptive working methods, you will need an adaptive contracting. And actually, you already perceive that when you talk about, you know, how you engage with external evaluators. You know, if you have to be reactive to timely feedback loops, for an external evaluator that you hire is not the same to have 3 team feedback loops than to have 6, correct? Because it's time, you have to prepare, you have to do meetings. So that requires and calls for adaptive contracting, yeah, and contingency budgeting. Okay, so that's what Patton says. Now, how can you in UNFPA do that? Valeria managed to do that, adaptive concreting, but she had challenges as well when we did the development. When we did the developmental evaluation, which by definition is a utilization focused type of evaluation, yeah, we were adaptive. And the evaluation lasted much longer than we thought. And there were plenty of feedback loops. And that was not incorporated, all of them, in the initial contract. Why? Because it's impossible. Emergence means that new things emerge. How can you plan for new things that you don't know? You cannot. Therefore, your contracting framework and your budgeting framework has to be adaptive. Now, how to do that? This is something that we will continue talking about. And here the idea is that you have to avoid rigidity and act with flexibility and agility, okay? And this is reflected actually in the UNFPA evaluation strategy. The thing is how you go about this cultural change, not only in the mindsets, but also in the systems, okay? And this is a challenge that remains to see. Now, let's share with you some of the these emergent things that happened while we were doing the developmental evaluation, which was a utilization-focused evaluation, because developmental evaluations are one of the types of utilization focus. It's one of the principles of a developmental. While we were doing the evaluation right in the middle, suddenly in May, well, already in February, but 2019, the United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework was being developed. And actually UNFPA, one of the executive directors, was leading the process. So in one of these feedback loops that we were having, they said, well, actually, given that we are moving to joint programs and a joint cooperation framework, joint RBM is of the essence. What does this evaluation have to say about that? You see, and we had some questions in the evaluation matrix about joint programs, but we were not prioritizing that. It was not a priority to that day. And then that became a very high priority. So we had to adapt immediately to start collecting data about that particular aspect. So that changed the priority of the questions and also data collection. Another example, and Valeria can tell you more about that, is that while we were doing the evaluation as well, we found out through USAID and other organizations like FCDO that those that had been evolving resource-based management and going into adaptive management, which is one of the findings that we found here, they used evaluation officers a lot to promote that change in the organization. So suddenly we realized that the evaluation office was not only the supplier of the developmental evaluation, they became the user, right? And they needed to know a lot about this in order then to promote change. So we started doing feedback loops with the developmental evaluation. So we had with the evaluation office. So we had an independent evaluation office that was conducting the evaluation and at the same time receiving the results of the evaluation as a primary intended user. And the third example would be that during data collection, we wanted to, well, we had in the plan to interview several donors from the OECD community. And suddenly in one of the meetings, we realized that there was a OECD resource community conference with donors that was in Paris. And they wanted to present the state-of-the-art RBM. So that was absolutely what the evaluation needed to know about. So here we adapted, we saw that was of the essence to be there. So we had to adapt everything to participate in that particular event. And instead of interviewing donors one-on-one, we did a focus group with them. We inserted the evaluation in there. We made a presentation and we linked UNFPA with the process. And that also was an adaptation of the evaluation. And what guides us throughout the process is how will this affect use? There is an OEC results community meeting in April in Paris. Will that affect the use that our intended users have about the evaluation? Yes, it might have in these and these and these reasons. Okay, then what can we do in order to adapt? That was the thinking behind, okay? To finalize with the course, you have here a table. This is from the Utilization Focus Evaluation book from Michael Quinn-Patton and Charmaine. And here you have the traditional evaluation designs and the adaptive evaluation designs. Okay, and what are the changes in terms of the purpose of the evaluation, the questions, the methods, the way you report, and how you judge quality? You see, there's no good or bad. here the important thing, going back to Moses's question, is what do we need? Do we need a traditional type of evaluation? Yes, maybe that's what we need. So then it's what you do. Don't do an adaptive evaluation when what you need is a traditional evaluation. That would be the biggest problem. And the other way around, don't do it traditionally. What you need is an adaptive evaluation. That's why these are elements in order to prompt your thinking. Okay, so that will be the end. There is we would like to make a quick survey. It's only 3 minutes about to learn more about you. The idea is that we continue with several pills. Yeah, there will be another pill now in the 6th of December, and then on the 13th of December, and then in January. Now Valeria will tell you about that. And in order to inform that and to follow you, we wouldn't like, I mean, if you join, we would like you to go through the whole process of pills. So we would like to have that information from you. So Valeria has put in the chat the link to the Survey Monkey. So if you could take a couple of minutes to tell us where you work, and well, we know the region because that's why we're here, Asia Pacific, that's clear, but your function and also the types of evaluation that you usually conduct, and whether you would be applying these methods more or less in the future, so we can get user feedback. Yeah, here we're getting, this is a bit of a feedback loop that we're trying to get your feedback in order to incorporate into the design. So while you are going into the Survey Monkey and replying to these very quick questions, maybe, you know, tell you a bit what's next. We will continue doing pills, and then, well, maybe Valeria, you would like to tell what's coming next. You're leading the process, so you might take the floor.
Yes. So colleagues, remember that you have all the materials in that link. I will send another email also with a reminder with a link, but also you will have all the recordings as well. So it would be good to practice or to read, especially I think, Jordi, you had put some materials as well for reading, so and some videos as well. So if you can look at those, that would be very, very useful. If you have any questions or further comments, you can reach out, obviously. And then we have 2 more courses coming up. Yeah, those are the dates for the second session, right? 6th and the 13th. Anyways, I will send another email confirming those the dates. The time will always be the same, will be at noon Bangkok time. So it's more convenient. And then in February, January, February, we launch the 3-4 other ones. And I think they're going to be very, very interesting, because you've also asked about like outcome harvesting, real-time evaluation. So, yeah, these are what's coming next. So yeah, evaluation pill 4, and these are the ones we're doing, yeah, next year.
Yeah, and these are the ones coming up. Yeah.
Yeah, the ones coming up. Yeah, real-time evaluation, developmental evaluation, adaptive inquiry frameworks, and then the pill 3, creative tensions, the iceberg model, and causal feedback loop diagrams. So those are happening this year, and then the other ones, yeah. Yeah, outcome harvesting, strategy testing, and then pill 5, facilitation methods in evaluation, and pill 6, evaluability assessments. So I think it's very innovative, and we've never had this type of training before at UNFPA. And I'm also hoping that you know, with the review of the methodology or CPEs, we could also add some sort of flexibility, agility, some changes that you could do, so it's not so strict and sort of a straitjacket, that that we can tweak it to make it more agile, because I do think there's many elements from developmental evaluation that would really enrich also a summative type of exercise. So we're definitely going to look into that. Then yes, we are putting together a very, very practical guide. So it's not possibly, yeah, no, it's not going to be like the handbook. It will be a lot more agile and practical, and with examples. And then next year, the guidance, obviously it's a work in process, so we'll start it, and then next year as well we'll continue with it, because it's also a lot based on these sessions. And then for next year as well, the idea is to do coaching. We started a bit with a coaching this year with some countries, but the idea is to continue more on the evaluation perspective, with countries that might be interested in having one of these exercises, conducting one, but would need a bit of support and to go along with you when conducting these exercises. And then, yes, also for the, the new model, the adaptive management model, the Compass, we will look as well on modules on adaptive monitoring, together with Taranga, with PSD in general. So that is what's coming up for next year. And other things might come up that we don't know, because we're going to adapt. So I can't tell you right now. But yes, we're really hoping to innovate and learn, and also be very participatory. So we really hope that you accompany us in this journey. I don't know if, did I forget anything?
I don't think so, Valeria. I think that you are very thorough. Just for those of you that, all of you that are still there, make sure that you answer the survey, so we have that information and we make sure that it's targeted to your particular realities. Yeah, actually, the idea with this is not to do theoretical courses on it. Just, we want to give you all that, all these new ideas and concepts, so you can see what might be feasible now and relevant for you. And then when you say, okay, we would like to try this because we think that that could be interesting now for us, then Valeria, Joseph, and Jordi will be there to observe. And we already, there is an office in Asia, actually, they're starting to apply outcome harvesting, which is something we will see in PIL number 4. And we are already having meetings with them. Very soon they have to meet with the evaluators and with the steering group, and we will be there also observing. So, giving a hand, and whenever you have questions, we are there as well. It's not only, this is the course, this is the material, you go, but we'll try to accompany you through the process. And then the idea is to create a community of adaptive evaluation. So then once you start trying all this, then you share experiences among yourselves, and then deliver your trainings and to other offices that would like to apply those approaches, I think.
No, and I think it's important to know that this is all emerging, I would say, in the development, like agencies and other organizations. Maybe, USAID has been doing developmental for a while, and other approaches, but for the UN, for us, I would say it's starting. So there isn't a lot of knowledge out there or resources. There's, Michael Quinn Patton, we were so fortunate to work with him in the first developmental evaluation. But as well, there's not a lot of consultants that have the, capacity or the experience and have worked with these very adaptive approaches. So there are challenges, but this is where the trend is going. So that's why we're in it, and we're working towards this. But yeah, it's definitely very exciting. I think, at least I had a very, very interesting experience doing the developmental evaluation. It was, I think, the best evaluation I've ever participated in. Jordi, Joseph, I hope you feel the
Yes.
same way. No.
Yes, yes, we do.
Definitely.
We do. That's why
you
we're
know,
still here. We're still here. Yes,
that,
yes, yes.
that definitely
Absolutely.
left an important mark, and now Valeria, we are able to call you our friend, which I think that speaks a lot.
Okay, so if you want to
um,
close, yeah, Valeria, all yours. So thank you everybody for your attention and signing up, and we look forward to seeing you in the next spills. Yeah, there is another 5 to come.
yeah, and remember, yeah, to read the materials, and you have the presentations, you have the first introduction presentation as well there, and you can tell other colleagues to also look at the presentations, and if they have any comments, they can reach out. So thank you for answering the survey. I see several answers already. So thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you now in December for the next 2 pills.